She was mopping the lobby floor until the CEO heard her speak, Mandarin, Spanish, and French like a native. What happened next shocked the entire company. Most people didn't notice the cleaning crew at Hallberg International, not out of malice. Just habit. They came in after hours, pushing carts, changing trash bags, wiping down conference tables, blending into the background like elevator music. It was Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas, and the company's main lobby buzzed with shoes clacking against tile, people tapping on phones, talking deadlines, and clutching coffee like it held the answers. Jonathan Kellerman, the company's CEO, was halfway through his walk from the parking garage to the 18th floor executive suite when he heard it. A voice, but not just any voice. Fluent, sharp, and rolling through a language he hadn't heard since his last visit to the company's Shanghai office. Mandarin. It stopped him cold. Not because it was Mandarin, but because of who was speaking it. He glanced around, thinking maybe one of the international sales reps had come in early, but then he saw her. A woman in a burgundy janitor's uniform, her short twists pulled back into a ponytail, standing near the touchscreen lobby directory. She was mid-conversation with an older man in a navy jacket and thick-rimmed glasses, who looked confused and relieved all at once. She was gesturing calmly, her voice warm and firm, directing him toward the elevators. Kellerman narrowed his eyes. He'd seen her before, passing through the halls after late meetings, always polite, always quiet, never made eye contact unless spoken to. He didn't even know her name. But here she was, effortlessly translating and explaining building logistics, in a language most Americans couldn't even pronounce correctly. He took a slow step forward. As he got closer, she wrapped up the conversation and turned toward a delivery man holding a clipboard. Está buscando el muelle de carga. Está detrás del edificio junto al estacionamiento norte, she said, fluidly, switching into Spanish. The delivery man blinked. Sí, gracias. Then, just as casually, she turned to a vendor standing nearby, looking at a set of mislabeled boxes. C'est mal marqué. La salle de conférence B est de l'autre côté, she told him in French, pointing with a faint smile. Kellerman's jaw clenched slightly, not from anger, but from something else, something tighter, a pinch of guilt. He'd worked in global logistics for over 2 decades, led international expansions, hired translators, built cross-cultural training programs. Yet here, in his own building, the most linguistically gifted person he'd encountered in months had been scrubbing toilets just 2 floors below. He stepped forward, more curious than commanding. "Excuse me." She turned toward him, startled but composed. "Yes, sir," he smiled faintly. "That was Mandarin, right?" "Yes, sir. You speak it fluently?" "Yes, in Spanish, French." She nodded. "Also Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I read Latin, but I don't really count that." He blinked. "You're telling me you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." There was no pride in her tone, no arrogance, just truth, straight as a level beam. He stared at her for a second, trying to catch up to the fact that a janitor in his building, a woman who mopped floors in silence every night, was a walking United Nations. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Denise Atwater." "Miss Atwater, are you free for a few minutes?" Her brow raised slightly. "Now?" "Yes, I'd like to talk to you. In my office." He noticed the look of hesitation, not fear exactly, just that built-in reflex people have when they're used to being ignored or underestimated. She slowly nodded. "All right." He pressed the elevator button, holding the door open as she stepped inside. Inside the lift, silence settled for a moment. "I've worked here for 13 years, she said suddenly as they rose toward the executive floor. He turned toward her. "Never thought I'd be invited up." He gave a small, quiet smile. "You might be surprised how quickly things can change," but he had no idea just how much was about to change. Not for her and not for him. The elevator dinged. Denise stepped out first, her shoes quiet on the polished wood floor of the executive hallway. It smelled like citrus and leather. Money if you had to put a cent on it. Kellerman's assistant glanced up, wide-eyed at the sight of Denise beside him. He didn't explain, just nodded for her to let them through. Once inside the glass-walled office, he gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit." She sat carefully, folding her hands in her lap, eyes moving slowly across the room. She wasn't impressed, just observant. A large world map hung behind him, each country dotted with colored pins. On the side table, a tray of espresso, cups, a photo of his 2 daughters, and a dusty award from a trade conference in Brussels. Kellerman sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "So, Denise, I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect to have this conversation today." She gave a small nod, her posture still, her face unreadable. "But I just heard you speak 3 languages like you were flipping light switches, and I need to understand. How does someone like you end up working here, cleaning floors?" For a second, she didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back to him. "You got time for the truth? I wouldn't have asked otherwise." She sighed. "All right, then." She rubbed her palms together as if warming up the words. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio, only child. My dad was a pipe fitter, my mom a nurse's aide. They didn't have much, but they worked hard, pushed education like it was religion. I got a full ride to Kent State, majored in linguistics, was halfway through a master's when my mother got sick." She paused. "I came home to take care of her. Then, my dad passed from a stroke 6 months later. Everything fell apart after that." She tilted her head slightly as if rewinding the memories before she spoke them. "I had a baby, no money, no partner who stuck around. So I worked whatever I could find. Grocery stores, nursing homes, temp jobs. Eventually a custodial supervisor here offered me night hours. It let me pick up my daughter from school, pay the light bill. That's how I got here." Kellerman watched. Her no blinking, just listening. "But the languages. I didn't stop learning. I borrowed textbooks, listened to recordings, read newspapers in 5 different tongues just to stay sharp. It's what I do. It's the only thing I do that makes me feel like I still matter." Her voice didn't waver. It wasn't rehearsed or poetic, just plain. "Most people never asked," she added. "They saw the uniform and assumed." That last word hung in the air, assumed. Kellerman sat back in his chair, the weight of her story settling into his chest like a stone. She cleared her throat. "Look, Mr. Kellerman, I'm not saying this to make anyone feel bad. I'm not bitter. Life happened, I did what I had to do, I still do, but you asked and that's the answer." He exhaled slowly. Denise Atwater was brilliant. That much was obvious now. But she wasn't asking for pity or even a handout. She was giving the truth. Clean, clear, and a little heartbreaking. "You ever think about doing anything else?" he asked. She gave a small shrug. "Sometimes, but it's hard to dream when your rent's due." Silence fell again, but it was different now, denser, full of something unspoken, but powerful. Kellerman reached for his notebook, jotted down a few lines. "What are you writing?" she asked, her voice still calm but a little curious now. He looked up at her. "Ideas." But one idea, in particular, was already forming in his head, and it wasn't small. The conversation stuck with him all day. Even during budget reviews and vendor calls, Jonathan Kellerman's mind kept circling back to that morning, to Denise Atwater, her calm voice and the quiet way she'd listed 9 languages like they were nothing. That kind of fluency didn't just happen. It took years of discipline, curiosity, and heart. Around 3:45 p.m., left the executive floor and rode the elevator down to the building's service level. He wanted to see something for himself. Down there the air was warmer. The walls were off-white, scuffed from carts and boots. He passed by maintenance crews, break rooms, stacks of bottled water, and finally reached the janitorial supply room. He spotted Denise through the open door, restocking microfiber cloths on a metal shelf. "Mind if I bother you again?" he asked, stepping inside. She turned, slightly startled. "You came down here?" He smiled. "Couldn't stop thinking about our talk. Listen, I have a favor to ask." She wiped her hands on her shirt. "What kind of favor?" "There's a meeting upstairs. A group from the Sao Paulo office came early, and our translator cancelled last minute. Can you help?" She hesitated for only a second. "Portuguese?" "Yes, I can do that." Minutes later, they were in conference room 4C4. Brazilian executives sat, awkwardly checking their phones. Denise stepped in quietly, nodded, and began speaking in smooth, confident Portuguese. Kellerman watched as the entire room shifted, shoulders relaxed, eye contact sharpened. She wasn't just translating. She was bridging a gap, making people feel seen. When one of the visitors cracked a joke in Portuguese, Denise responded with a laugh and a return joke that had them all chuckling. Kellerman didn't understand a word, but he understood connection. After 20 minutes, the meeting wrapped. One of the execs turned to him and said in English, "She's better than anyone we've worked with this year. Where'd you find her?" Kellerman looked at Denise, who was already stacking empty cups on a tray. "Right here," he said. Back in the hallway, he caught up with her. "You ever do professional translation before?" She shook her head. "Just helped folks out in hospitals, government offices, things like that." No certificate, no time for school. My daughter needed me more." Kellerman nodded. "And where is she now?" "She's 26, nurse in Tempe, paid for school herself, stubborn, like her mama." They both smiled, and for a second it didn't feel like CEO and janitor. Just two people talking about life. They returned to the service level where Denise clocked back in. She had 2 more floors to clean before shift change. Before she left, she said something that stuck with him. "I didn't do anything special today." He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "That's not how it looked to me." She gave him a small smile and walked off. That night, Kellerman sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He thought about everything. The pressure to grow the company, the investor meetings, the endless discussions on diversity and untapped talent. All this time they've been looking outside, recruiting globally, searching for new blood. But sometimes the gold's already in your backyard, and once you realize that, the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? The next morning, Denise's badge beeped at the wrong time. She had just finished wiping down the east lobby when her supervisor, Ron, tapped her on the shoulder with a look that wasn't exactly annoyed, but wasn't normal either. "Hey, Denise, Mr. Kellerman asked to see you again." She blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Ron shook his head. "He didn't say, just told me to send you up." She cleaned her hands on a towel and followed the same path she'd taken the day before. Only this time everyone in the building seemed to notice her. People she passed looked up, some whispered. One of the receptionists even gave her a polite smile, like she knew something Denise didn't. When she walked into the executive suite, Kellerman stood near the window, sipping black coffee and staring out at the skyline. "Come in," he said, not turning around yet. She stood quietly by the door until he faced her. "I've been thinking," he said, placing his mug on a coaster, "about talent. Waste. How many people never get a shot, not because they're not good, but because nobody looks twice?" Denise said nothing. She didn't trust easy praise. She'd seen too many people talk big and do little. "I want to create a new position," he continued, "one that didn't exist before, something this company badly needs, even if we didn't know it. Now." She furrowed her brow. "For what?" "Cultural liaison for international affairs, someone who can speak the languages, read between the lines, handle visitors, vendors, documents, all the global touchpoints that we're constantly fumbling through." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You're qualified. Probably more than most of the people in our leadership team, honestly, and you've already proved you can handle it. With grace, patience, and brains." She stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "This real? As real as it gets? I don't have a college degree. You have something better. Lived experience, commitment, and fluency in 9 languages. You think I care about a piece of paper?" She shifted her weight, still unsure. "Why me?" He looked directly at her. "Because I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9 a.m. yesterday. And because I'm tired of walking past people like you, people doing twice the work for half the credit." Denise crossed her arms. "You know what people are going to say. I don't care." She stared at him a long moment, then let out a slow breath. "I've never had an office job," she said. "Never had a title. You'll learn fast. I don't have a wardrobe for this kind of thing. I'll have HR send a clothing stipend." She gave a dry chuckle. "You thought of everything, huh? I'm trying." A long pause stretched between them, then Denise asked softly, "What about my shift downstairs? Who replaces me?" Kellerman smiled. "We'll find someone, but no one can replace you." For a long time, neither of them spoke. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "You sure this isn't some kind of favor?" He shook his head. "This is overdue recognition." She bit her lip, eyes glistening, but she blinked the tears away before they fell. "All right then," she said, voice firm. Let's see what I can do. He extended his hand. She shook it. It wasn't just a handshake. It was history being rewritten. But what neither of them expected was how everyone else in the building would react. By Wednesday, the news had traveled faster than the elevators. Denise Atwater, the janitor from the night shift, had been promoted to an executive-level position. Nobody knew the full story, just whispers that she spoke a bunch of languages, that the CEO himself had chosen her, that she might have some kind of secret background, maybe government work, maybe even undercover. The gossip bounced from cubicle to conference room. Some folks were curious, some smiled, said, "Good for her." But not everyone was clapping. In the staff lounge, 2 marketing assistants leaned close over their salads. "I'm just saying," one whispered. "I have a master's in international business, and I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion. This lady was scrubbing urinals last week." Her friend shrugged. "Maybe she knows something we don't." "Oh, please. It's Kellerman trying to look progressive. Check a box." That same energy trickled into boardrooms and Slack messages, quiet resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't used to upward moves coming from outside the usual ladder. Denise felt it the second she stepped into her new office on the 12th floor. It was modest, just a desk, a plant, and a computer she hadn't touched yet. But to her it looked like another planet. When HR finished onboarding her, she asked if she could keep the night uniform not to wear, just to remind herself. That afternoon she met with Victor, head of international operations. He walked in, with a clipboard and tight eyes, didn't shake her hand, didn't sit. "So you're the new liaison," he said like it was a joke wrapped in politeness. Denise looked up. "That's what I'm told. You have experience in corporate environments." She smiled, only from the outside looking in. He didn't laugh. "I've got reports from Italy, contracts from our Dubai partners, and an entire vendor issue in Sao Paulo. Think you can manage that?" She stood up. "I'll need a few hours to review, but yes." Victor dropped the folder on her desk and walked out. Later that night, Kellerman stopped by her office. "How's day 1? She exhaled, leaned back in her chair. "I've had worse." He smiled. "Victor, give you a hard time. He doesn't scare me, I figured." She paused, then added, "But can I ask you something, anything? Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and kept moving." He leaned against the doorframe. "Because I saw myself in you." She raised an eyebrow. "You were a janitor." "No, but I was overlooked a lot. I came from nothing. My dad fixed cars in a town no one visits. I worked 3 jobs through college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this." Denise nodded slowly. "Now, you're the one deciding who gets in." He nodded back. "Exactly." There was a beat of silence before Denise looked down at the file on her desk. "I'll be honest, I'm nervous. Good. Means you care." She looked up again. "There's going to be people who hate this. They'll get over it, or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward." Kellerman stood straight. "You have a story, Denise. A real one. And now you've got a platform." Then he turned to leave. As the door clicked behind him, Denise looked around her office. She remembered the years she'd cried in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks, the nights she came home with aching feet and barely enough energy to heat up. Super, the birthdays she missed, the promotions she watched go to people who never even said good morning. She opened her desk drawer and placed the old janitor badge inside, not to forget, to remember exactly what it took to get here. But this story wasn't just hers anymore, and the spotlight was about to grow much brighter. By the end of the week, Denise's nameplate was mounted outside her office. Black letters on brushed steel, "Denise Atwater, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs." It looked official, clean, permanent. Word had gotten out, formally this time. The company-wide email hit inboxes Friday morning, sent by Kellerman himself. It was short, clear, and carried weight. He explained her role, her background, and more importantly, her value. Value. He didn't frame it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear. She was the best person for the job. Period. But that didn't stop the noise. Some managers grumbled under their breath. Others softened up once they saw her in action. She navigated conversations with foreign clients better than the software. She corrected mistranslations in old contracts that had cost them money for years, and she never showed off. She just worked, quietly, smoothly, better than anyone had expected. On Monday, Denise was asked to join a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's North African expansion had been stuck for months over miscommunication and mistrust. She walked into the room in a soft beige blazer, sat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room changed. You could feel it, the shift. People leaned in. They listened. Because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you hear respect. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached her privately. He touched his chest gently, a traditional sign of gratitude. "No one's ever done that for us," he said. "Not in our language, not like that." Denise nodded. "You matter, that's all." By midweek, Kellerman made another move. He renamed the company's main training room, where all new hires gathered for orientation and where mid-level leaders held workshops. The plaque outside the door was taken down. In its place, the Atwater room. No big announcement, no party. Just a quiet sign and a shift that meant more than flowers or cake ever could. Later that afternoon, Kellerman stood outside the room watching as a new group of interns filed in. He heard one of them whisper, "Who's Atwater?" A senior staff member answered, "She's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come in a suit." That same day, Denise found a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name, handwritten in block letters. Inside was a note. It read, "I used to think I'd be invisible forever, but today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just proof that people were watching. People who needed to see what was possible. Denise sat there, staring at the words, her throat tightening. She didn't cry. She didn't need to, because that was the moment she realized this wasn't just a job, it was a door. But not every door stays open without a fight, and someone was already planning to push back. The backlash didn't take long to show its face. Late Thursday, Denise was called into a meeting, not by Kellerman, but by someone higher up, Eleanor Craig, a senior board member who'd flown in from Dallas. She'd been with the company since the 90s. Sharp suits, sharper tongue. Denise walked into the small conference room on the 17th floor, where Eleanor waited with a stack of papers and a flat stare. "Have a seat," she said, without looking up. Denise sat. Eleanor tapped her pen twice. "So, Miss Atwater, I've reviewed your file. You have no college degree, no previous corporate training, and no management certifications." Denise didn't flinch. "That's correct." Eleanor folded her hands. "You were a janitor here 3 weeks ago. I was." She leaned back in her chair. "Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling high-level international affairs." Denise held her gaze. "Because I speak the languages. I understand the cultures. I've already fixed 2 vendor contracts and cleared a 3-month delay in our Morocco deal. I also helped secure a verbal agreement with our Brazilian partners that legal is finalizing next week." Eleanor pursed her lips. "You think this company should be run on instinct and charm?" Denise smiled slightly. "No, ma'am, I think it should be run on results." Eleanor blinked. That was the first time Denise had seen her hesitate. "I don't need to be liked," Denise added, "but I do need to be useful. And I am." Eleanor stood and slowly closed the folder. "You're a gamble." "I'm used to that," Denise said quietly. "My entire life's been one." When the meeting ended, Denise didn't return to her office right away. She walked out of the building and sat on a bench across the street, staring at the glass tower she now worked in. So many years she had walked past that building, wearing the same uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone saw her. Now they all did. And some didn't like it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. "Hey, Ma," her daughter answered. "Everything okay?" Denise hesitated, then nodded to herself. "Yeah, just needed to hear your voice." "You sure?" "I'm sure." They talked for a few minutes, mostly about nothing. Groceries, her daughter's dog, a new movie she wanted to watch, but just hearing her laugh steadied Denise. After they hung up, she sat in silence. Then she stood up, walked back across the street and rode the elevator to her floor. By the next morning, word of the Eleanor Craig meeting had somehow spread. And to everyone's surprise, Denise didn't back down. She showed up early, spoke at a team meeting, took a call with the German office without needing a translator. Calm, sharp, unbothered. That same day, a handwritten note appeared on the whiteboard outside her office. "We see you." No name, just 3 words that meant the world. In the following weeks, something strange happened. People started coming to her, not just for translation but advice, guidance, confidence. She became the person people went to before they pitched an idea. She'd sit with interns and give them tips before big presentations, and she never talked down to anyone. One of the interns, a shy Vietnamese kid named Bao, asked her, "How did you learn all those languages?" She smiled. "1 word at a time, same way you will." Denise wasn't just doing her job, she was changing the culture. One afternoon, Kellerman joined her for coffee in the break room. "Been hearing good things," he said. She sipped from her cup, been trying to ignore the bad ones. "You're making waves," she looked at him. "That a good thing?" He smiled. "Around here? It means you're doing something right." They stood in silence for a moment. "You know," he added, "I've been thinking about starting a training program for internal talent, especially folks working non-desk roles. There's probably more Denises in this building." She nodded. "There are, they just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her. "Want to help me build it?" She smiled. "Already started in my head." By month's end, the pilot program launched, a new initiative called Voice Inside, designed to give workers across departments access to language training, leadership mentoring, and visibility across divisions. It was Denise's idea, and it caught fire. Eventually, she was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Cincinnati, where she told her story, not as a motivational tale, but as a reality check. "I was never just a janitor," she said to the crowd. "I was fluent. I was capable. I was ready. But nobody ever looked long enough to see it. So the next time you pass someone without a title, ask yourself, what are you really missing?" The room was silent, and then it stood, full applause. On her way out, a young man approached her with tears in his eyes. "My mom's a housekeeper," he said, "and she speaks 5 languages." I used to be embarrassed to say that. Denise touched his arm. "Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance." She walked out of that building taller than she ever had in her life, not because of the applause, not because of the promotion, but because she hadn't changed who she was to fit the role. She'd brought herself every layer of her story with her, and that made all the difference. Never assume you know someone's worth based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Talent has no dress code, intelligence doesn't need permission, and brilliance can walk past you wearing a name tag, holding a mop. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you, and when they do, don't be afraid to take that seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you.